Have you ever stood in the middle of a celebration meant to honor family and felt like you didn't even exist? That night, as champagne glasses clinked and cameras flashed, I learned how quietly a person can be erased. One moment you're the daughter of honor, the next you're an afterthought, literally without a seat at the table. And yet, hidden in that humiliation was the beginning of the most powerful turning point of my life. My name is Olivia Hamilton, and I'm 35 years old. The night of my father's retirement gala at the Grandview Hotel was supposed to sparkle with gratitude and family pride. Instead, it glittered with something colder: ambition sharpened like crystal edges. The Grandview's ballroom smelled faintly of lilies and expensive perfume. Golden chandeliers scattered light like falling coins. As Marcus and I hurried in 15 minutes late because of an accident on the highway, I tried to quiet the nerves buzzing in my chest. I smoothed the navy dress I'd bought 3 years ago for a Teacher of the Year ceremony, my one little luxury. Marcus, in his simple black suit, checked his phone again. "Everything okay at work?" I asked, catching the flicker of some secret calculation in his eyes. "Just some last-minute details," he said, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze. "Nothing to worry about." But I did worry. The room was alive with prestige school board members in tailored suits, reporters from the Education Journal, donors with jeweled ties and sharp smiles. A massive banner dominated the stage, celebrating Principal Robert Hamilton, 30 years of educational excellence. My father, Robert Hamilton, stood near the entrance in a charcoal Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Beside him, Patricia, his wife of 4 years, glittered in a sequined gold gown. They looked like a magazine cover of late-life triumph. "Olivia!" Dad's voice boomed when he spotted us, though his smile didn't reach his eyes. "You made it." "Of course, Dad. Wouldn't miss your big night." Patricia's glance slid over my dress like a credit card swipe, efficient and faintly disapproving. "How nice of you to come. Jessica's been here for an hour already networking with the board members." Jessica, Patricia's daughter, the one who fit their idea of success like a tailored glove. Before I could explain the traffic, Patricia cut in smoothly. "Let's get you to your table." As we wove through the glittering crowd, I noticed the local news crew setting up cameras. Something about tonight felt staged, too rehearsed. Patricia's relentless smile, my father's polite but distant nods, Marcus's phone vibrating like a hidden metronome. Then came the moment that froze me in place. The place cards at the VIP table gleamed like verdicts. Robert Hamilton, Patricia Hamilton, Jessica Morrison, David Chen, board members, donors, but no Olivia Hamilton. I checked twice, 3 times, my heart sinking with each pass. "There must be some mistake," I said, trying to sound casual. Patricia appeared at my elbow, her voice syrupy and sharp. "Oh, didn't Robert tell you? We had to make some last-minute adjustments. Space constraints, you understand?" "But I'm his daughter," I said quietly. "Of course you are, dear. You're at table 12 right over there." She pointed toward a table half hidden behind a decorative pillar. "You'll have so much in common to discuss with the other teachers." Her words cut deeper than the placement. Teachers, not leaders, back there, not up front. Marcus's jaw tightened. "This is her father's retirement dinner. And we're so glad you both could come," Patricia said, already turning back toward Jessica. "Jessica, darling, tell Mr. Chen about your latest case win." Jessica looked up with a perfectly practiced smile. "Oh, Olivia, didn't see you there. Don't you look comfortable?" Her eyes swept my 3-year-old dress. Patricia added, "Jessica just won a multi-million-dollar case, youngest senior associate in her firm's history." I forced a smile while heat climbed my neck. Inside, memories replayed like an old film. The college graduation Dad skipped for a last-minute golf trip, the birthdays he forgot when Patricia planned cruises. Tonight felt like all those dismissals crystallized into a single, glittering humiliation. Marcus slipped his arm around my shoulders. "Let's go to table 12, I whispered. The words tasted like defeat. As we walked away, Patricia's voice floated above the music. "Jessica, my daughter, senior associate at Foster & Associates, winner of the Peterson Foundation case. And that's Robert's daughter Olivia, heading to the back. She teaches elementary school at PS 48, the public one." The way she said public made it sound contagious. Table 12 was draped in budget polyester, a distant island behind a pillar. Around it sat other teachers, each in their best clothes, each wearing that same look of quiet awareness. We're the bargain seats. Third grade, right? Asked Mrs. Chen, a math teacher with kind eyes. I heard you won Teacher of the Year last year. I did, I managed. That's wonderful, she said. And we both heard the unspoken truth. Wonderful doesn't get you to the VIP table. Across the ballroom, Patricia laughed brightly as Jessica discussed corporate sponsorships. Dad walked past our table twice without stopping. Each pass felt like a silent erasure. Marcus's phone buzzed again. I glimpsed the screen. Confirmation received. Ready when you are. He slid it back, his face unreadable. What is that about? I whispered. Just work, he said, though something in his voice suggested more. Inside me, a quiet fury began to take root. I'd come to honor my father, but he'd already decided where I belonged, hidden in the shadows while Jessica shone. I didn't yet know how much Marcus was hiding in plain sight, or how this night would upend every balance of power in our family. The farther we were from the stage, the more everything looked like a movie I wasn't cast in. The orchestra's polite strings blurred into the clink of flatware and the hush of donor gossip. The pillar beside us stole half the view, but not the sound every time Patricia said, Harvard, or senior associate. The syllables found me like heat-seeking darts. Mrs. Chen gracious, soft-spoken, the kind of teacher who probably kept peppermints in her desk touched my sleeve. Ignore the front tables, she murmured. I've taught 30 years. The front is where people sit. The back is where people build. I tried to smile. I wanted tonight to be simple, applaud, hug my dad, go home. Simple rarely survives other people's expectations, she said, eyes kind. Especially when there's money and titles involved. Around us, the other teachers made small talk like we were all trying to pretend the pillar wasn't a metaphor. A young art teacher, tie a little too tight, whispered. Is it true he promised you the board seat? I hesitated. Gossip is a survival skill at these things, but truth felt heavy. He said when he retired, a teacher should guide the fund, that I'd be the one. Saying it out loud felt like pressing on a bruise. Across the room, my father's laugh rose above the music, warm, performative. The same laugh he used at awards assemblies when he posed with valedictorians. He gestured at Jessica with a proud sweep, and camera flashes punctuated the admiration. For a moment I saw him as my third-grade self once had. Invincible, necessary, the gravity our little family orbited. The ache that followed was an old one, missing someone who was right in front of me. Marcus slid a water glass toward me. Sip, he said gently. He was watching the room the way he watches a chessboard, calm, patient, tracking lines I couldn't see. What are you planning? I asked, voice low. He turned those steady eyes on me. To make sure you don't leave here believing a lie about your worth. It sounded like a vow, but his phone buzzed again and he glanced down, thumb hovering, mind elsewhere. I caught a fragment on the lock screen. AV check complete. Contract packet queued. My stomach lifted and dropped like an elevator. Who was he texting? Why AV? A tiny memory flared Marcus. 6 months ago, sketching a diagram on a napkin, talking about alignment and guardrails for grants, like he was building a dam to channel a flood. I'd asked if it was for his consulting clients. He'd smiled and changed the subject. At the time, I'd thought it was cute how he loved systems. Now it felt like I'd been living with a map folded shut. Patricia's voice skimmed across the room, perfectly amplified despite the mic being 40 feet away. And Jessica's identified 3 corporate partners already. Real innovation, not just classroom charity drives. The table around me stiffened. Mrs. Chen's mouth flattened. The art teacher muttered something that sounded like paint water, then coughed to cover it. I let my gaze drop to my hands, ink stain fading along my ring finger from grading earlier. It hit me, unfairly, that tonight I wasn't allowed to be both. A person who corrects spelling on vocabulary tests, and a person whose experience could steer $500,000 of scholarships each year. In my father's storyline, I had been assigned a role, the nice one, the helper. Helpers set up chairs, leaders sat in them. Marcus squeezed my knee beneath the tablecloth. Breathe, he murmured. "We're not staying in the shadows all night." "How can you be so sure?" I asked. "I know the story they think they're telling," he said, almost to himself. "I also know how it ends." The lights dipped one shade just enough to signal program time. The MC, one of Dad's colleagues, did the practiced welcome, joked about retirement, thanked the caterer. A few teachers at our table clapped with solidarity more than enthusiasm. I found myself doing math with the centerpieces. If each orchid arrangement cost $300, and there were 20, the flowers alone were $6,000. That could fund my entire classroom library list, plus new decodables for first grade. "Tell me one good thing," Marcus said, leaning close. "From this week, classroom good." "Tommy read aloud to the class," I said, smiling despite everything. 5 pages. He stumbled twice, self-corrected both times. He looked up and said, "Mrs. Hamilton, I was flying." Pride warmed me like a mug of tea cupped in both hands. Marcus's jaw softened. "Write that down somewhere," he said, "because in about 10 minutes, they're going to try to convince you none of it matters." The MC ceded the stage, and my father stepped into the spotlight to a standing ovation I could feel more than see. He looked like a man who belonged in front of a microphone, chin lifted, shoulders set, the room recognizing his practiced authority. He thanked the board, the donors, the district. He clasped Patricia's hand and praised Jessica's drive. He said "excellence" 3 times in the first minute. He did not say my name. The omission wasn't loud, but it was precise. Leaving a word out is still a choice. By the time the applause dipped, I was holding a napkin so tightly the hem left a pattern on my palm. The teachers at our table knew. I could feel their attention like a shawl around my shoulders, awkward, protective. I closed my eyes and drifted back to a different microphone. 8th grade talent show. Me on stage with a violin I'd practiced until my fingertips grooved. Dad had stood in the wings, one hand on his belt, scanning the program for the student headed to MIT's gifted summer lab. That night, like most nights, my music was something sweet that happened in the background of other people's brilliance. My father's voice rose for the big reveal. "Now, the Hamilton Education Fund has received a generous commitment of $5 million from TechEdu Corporation." Polite gasps, fresh applause. "This fund will support emerging educational leaders, and I'm thrilled to announce who will take my seat on the board of directors." I went still. The room crisped into focus, every fork, flower, and face. I saw myself 3 years ago at Dad's kitchen table, a yellow legal pad between us. "When I retire, Olivia, you'll carry this forward. A teacher's perspective matters." I'd written notes in the margin that night, ideas for mentorships, stipends for counselors. I'd kept the legal pad. I keep things. "After careful consideration," my father said, beaming toward the VIP table, "Jessica Morrison will be joining the board as my successor." The sound that left me wasn't a gasp, it was smaller and older. A breath I must have been holding since I was 8, and learned to read the weather in my father's tone. Jessica rose, smoothed her red dress, and performed modesty for the cameras. Patricia dabbed at her eyes. The applause swelled like a well-trained choir. Mrs. Chen's hand found mine. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. I nodded, unable to look away from the stage. Legal expertise, corporate connections. My father said the phrases like talismans warding off the possibility that classrooms know anything he doesn't. The orchestra resumed its underscoring. The lights warmed half a degree for photos. Behind my ribs, something heavy slid into place, a surprising clarity. Marcus stood. "Excuse me for a moment," he said quietly. "Where are you going?" Panic snapped me back to my body. "Marcus, don't make it worse." His eyes were almost tender. "I'm not making anything. I'm reminding them what they signed." He brushed his thumb over my knuckles, then stepped away, phone already at his ear. Across the room, Patricia was already choreographing the post-announcement orbit, ushering donors toward Jessica, aligning her with the board chair for photos, angling her face to the light. It was brutal in its efficiency. I caught my father's expression relief more than pride. He'd completed the scene he'd staged in his mind. My phone buzzed. "Need you to trust me. Watch David Chen." I scanned the VIP table. David, the board chair, checked his phone mid-compliment. I watched his posture change, first curiosity, then attention, then a flicker of, oh. He looked up, searching the room like he'd misplaced a crucial page. A donor at the neighboring table leaned toward us. "Is that your father?" she asked, oblivious to the bruise her question pressed. When I nodded, she said brightly, "You must be so proud. Such a visionary leader." My laugh surprised both of us. It sounded like something cracking and letting air in. "I used to be," I said. "Tonight I'm learning what he thinks leadership means." "Sometimes people confuse elevation with enlightenment," Mrs. Chen said dryly. "They think being above the classroom makes them see clearer." "Being above the work," I said, "mostly means you don't hear the noise it takes to do it." At the VIP table, Jessica launched into a monologue about leadership development pipelines. I caught one phrase that made my scalp prickle: administrative advancement. Not a word about classroom supplies, retention, teacher burnout, any of the proposals I'd drafted in evenings and weekends. I pictured my yellow legal pad again, the ideas neatly lettered, coffee ring in the corner like a quiet halo. I'd never shown it to Patricia. She didn't believe in halos unless they were diamond. The MC returned to transition into the next segment, but David Chen stood abruptly, holding a hand up for the mic. "Before we continue, I'd like to clarify something regarding our corporate sponsor." The room adjusted, a collective tilt toward actual news. My pulse leapt. From somewhere behind the pillar, I felt Marcus re-enter the room, a shift in gravity I recognized like scent. "Not now, Olivia," my father said when I rose on instinct, intent on reaching him. His tone had the principal's edge, the one that freezes 12-year-olds and, apparently, 35-year-old daughters. For once, I didn't sit. I took 2 steps into the aisle anyway, because there are nights when sitting makes you complicit in your own disappearance. Patricia's smile hardened. "You're making a scene." "Am I?" I kept my voice level, teacher calm. "I thought we were celebrating education." People around us angled their phones. Someone whispered my name. My face felt strangely cool, as if my skin understood before my brain did, that some lines, once crossed, can't be uncrossed and shouldn't be. Security began to move, slow and courteous, the way hotels prefer their problems, padded. Before they reached me, a voice cut across the music, soft but impossible to ignore. "That won't be necessary." Marcus stepped into the light like a man who knew exactly where the shadows ended. He nodded to the guards, to David Chen, then to my father, deference without deference. The room quieted as if it had leaned forward and held its breath. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Mr. Hamilton," he said evenly, "one question. Do you know who your primary sponsor actually is?" My father blinked. "The CEO of Tech Edu Corporation," he said, impatient. "Some tech executive." Marcus's mouth curved. Not a smile in answer. "Interesting." He glanced down at his phone, and something far away, a projector, maybe woke up with a hum. I felt it in my sternum. Teachers at our table sat straighter. At the VIP table, Jessica's composure wobbled a millimeter. Marcus slid his phone into his pocket, every gesture measured. "Let's continue," he said quietly, and for the first time all night, I believed we might. The ballroom lights softened to a ceremonial glow as my father stepped back to the microphone. Crystal chandeliers shimmered like they were applauding him. For a heartbeat, I let myself hope he might finally see me, his own daughter waiting in the shadows of table 12. "Friends and colleagues," he said with easy command, "thank you for joining me to celebrate 30 years of educational excellence." He told stories of his first days as a principal, the challenges of modern schools, the bright future of leadership. The room laughed and nodded on cue. Then came the moment that was supposed to include me. "I'm blessed with a wonderful family," Dad declared, gesturing to the glowing VIP table. "My beautiful wife Patricia, who's been my rock, and I'm especially proud of Jessica Morrison, who I think of as my own." As my own. The words slid across the crowd like cold steel. Cameras flashed. Jessica stood to a ripple of applause, her red designer dress catching every light. She smiled, that lawyer's smile, a careful balance of modesty and triumph. I waited for the next sentence. Surely, now he'd add, "and my daughter Olivia, a teacher shaping tomorrow's leaders." Surely, he'd keep his promise. Nothing. He moved on to thank the caterer. A silence bloomed inside me, deep and ringing. Mrs. Chen's warm hand rested over mine. That was expected, she whispered, trying to soften the blow. I nodded without speaking, afraid that if I opened my mouth, years of small betrayals would pour out at once. Memory stirred. The college graduation he skipped for a cruise with Patricia, birthdays he'd forgotten. The Christmas when Jessica's promotion filled every conversation while my Teacher of the Year award sat unmentioned under the tree. Tonight, all those slights gathered into a single, unarguable truth: my father valued titles more than teaching. Marcus leaned close. Remember the night you called him about that award? I blinked. He said he'd call back, I murmured. He never did. Marcus's quiet confirmation was a scalpel, sharp, precise, undeniable. The MC's voice announced the next segment, the evening's major announcement. My heart jumped. This was the moment Dad had promised me years ago. He smiled like a man about to unveil a masterpiece. As you know, the Hamilton Education Fund has received a generous $5 million commitment from Tech Edu Corporation. Tonight, I am thrilled to announce who will take my seat on the fund's board of directors. I gripped the table's edge so tightly I felt the wood grain in my palm. 3 years ago he'd said, "When I retire, Olivia, you'll carry this forward. Your classroom experience will be invaluable." I had spent late nights drafting proposals to fund classroom innovation. All that work pulsed in my memory like a second heartbeat. After careful consideration, he said, I am delighted to appoint Jessica Morrison as my successor. Applause thundered. Patricia dabbed her eyes with a silk napkin. Jessica rose with effortless poise, the cameras loving every angle. I sat frozen. Jessica? She'd never even taught a lesson. How could she possibly understand the daily hunger of classrooms, broken photocopiers, children needing winter coats, the quiet heroism of teachers who buy their own supplies? Beside me, Marcus's hand tightened around mine until I almost cried out. That position was yours, he said, low and firm. I know, I whispered. But the words barely covered the truth. It wasn't just a position I lost. It was a chance to channel real resources to the teachers I served every day. Jessica's voice floated across the room as she accepted the appointment. I'm eager to bring a fresh, strategic perspective to the fund, she said, promising to focus on leadership development and administrative advancement. Not a syllable about classrooms. Not a breath for the students or the teachers who shape them. My pulse hammered with helpless fury. Images flashed through my mind. Mrs. Rodriguez working weekends at a second job to stock her special ed classroom. The second-grade teacher who'd started a GoFundMe for basic supplies. The $200 I quietly spent every month on books. I had built plans for all of them, plans now dismissed with a signature and a smile. Marcus slipped his phone from his pocket, typed something quick, and slid it back. His calm was unnerving. I searched his face for clues. Whatever you're thinking, please don't, I whispered. It isn't worth the fight. He turned to me with that quiet steadiness I'd fallen in love with. Olivia, he said, you are worth every fight. The words landed in a place deeper than pride. They sounded like a door opening. On stage, Dad continued as if nothing trembled under the surface. Jessica will work closely with our primary sponsor, Tech Edu Corporation, to ensure their vision aligns with our goals. Their vision, not teachers' vision, not students' needs, corporate vision. A ripple of unease flickered across the teachers' tables. Mrs. Chen's lips pressed thin. She knew as I knew that a board without educators was like a school without classrooms. Marcus's phone buzzed again. He read the message, his jaw setting in a way that told me something decisive had just clicked into place. I leaned closer. Marcus, don't do anything drastic. He kissed my temple lightly, a gesture that felt like both comfort and promise. Trust me, he whispered. You deserve more than this. I watched Jessica bask under the spotlights, her laughter like fine crystal. My father beamed, utterly convinced he'd safeguarded his legacy. Yet I felt the air in the room shift, the faint prelude to a storm only Marcus seemed to hear. Inside me, two truths wrestled. The hurt of being betrayed by my own family and a rising, unfamiliar strength. I wasn't sure yet which would win. But I sensed without understanding how that the night wasn't finished with us. The room held the bright hum of celebration, but my mind felt like a narrowing tunnel, I'd sat in stunned silence through the applause, through Jessica's polished thank you, through the music that followed. Inside, one thought kept striking like a hammer. He promised this to me. I couldn't stay in the shadows any longer. My chair scraped the floor louder than I meant, and I started walking. The teachers at table 12 fell silent. Someone murmured my name like a warning. I didn't stop. As I stepped into the aisle, the chandeliers seemed to flare. Every head turned. Jessica's laughter paused mid-note. My father's eyes caught mine, and for a heartbeat, I saw not the celebrated principal, but the man who'd once told me bedtime stories about courage. "Dad," I said clearly, stopping at the VIP table. "We need to talk." He stiffened. "Not now, Olivia." "Yes, now." The conversation around the table collapsed into a waiting hush. Patricia's voice was silk over ice. "You're making a scene." "Am I?" My voice surprised me steady, teacher calm. Because I thought tonight was about celebrating education, not erasing it. My father's jaw worked. Circumstances changed. What circumstances? My teaching award? My master's degree? The decade I've spent helping kids who fall through the cracks? Jessica's smile sharpened. Managing a multi-million-dollar fund requires more than good intentions. And more than a Harvard resume, I said. It requires knowing what teachers and students actually need. Patricia's eyes glinted. Real-world experience, Olivia. Jessica has it. I laughed once, bitter and short. I teach 28 eight-year-olds every day. I buy supplies with my own salary. I spend nights designing individualized plans. How much more real does it get? A soft gasp rippled outward. Phones were already tilted, recording. "This is embarrassing," my father hissed. "You need to leave now." "What's embarrassing?" I countered. "Is giving an education board seat to someone who's never set foot in a classroom." Patricia raised a manicured hand. Security. 2 uniformed guards began moving toward us. I caught Marcus's eyes across the room. He stood near the sound booth now, phone in hand, watching David Chen, the board chair who was reading something on his own phone, brows drawn tight. Marcus nodded once, a signal I didn't understand but felt in my bones. I took a step back. "We're going," I said. "But everyone here deserves to know that Robert Hamilton just chose networking over knowledge, connections over compassion. His legacy tonight isn't education, it's opportunism." The words struck harder than I intended. For a flicker, I saw my father flinch. Patricia's voice sliced the air. "Escort her out." One guard reached for my elbow. Before he could touch me, Marcus's voice carried from behind, quiet but absolute. "That won't be necessary." He walked forward, every step controlled, until he stood between me and the guards like a wall built of calm. "We're leaving voluntarily," he said evenly. Then he turned to my father. "But first, one question." My father glared. "What? Do you know who your primary sponsor actually is?" The room tilted, a collective lean toward this unexpected line of inquiry. Patricia frowned. "Some tech executive. What does that—" Marcus's smile was subtle but unyielding. "Interesting. Shall we go, Olivia?" I blinked. What is he doing? My mind raced back over the cryptic texts. Confirmation received, ready when you are. The late-night calls he said were about consulting. The notebooks of educational policy he read before bed, threads of a pattern I had missed until now. We turned toward the exit. Cameras followed like curious birds. Then, halfway to the door, Marcus stopped. Actually stopped. He pivoted and looked back at the stage, shoulders squared, every inch of him radiating quiet intent. "I've changed my mind," he said. "Marcus?" I whispered. He gave me the faintest smile, the one he used when he'd already solved a puzzle and was about to show his work. "There's something I should have done the moment they changed your seat." And before I could answer, he started toward the podium, each stride deliberate, the room parting in front of him, as if it already knew the story was about to change. The crowd parted almost involuntarily as Marcus crossed the ballroom. The low clatter of silverware stopped. Even the orchestra fell into an uneasy pause. He climbed the stage steps with the quiet certainty of someone who belonged there. "Excuse me, Mr. Hamilton," Marcus said into the microphone, his calm voice reaching every corner of the room. "Before we leave, may I ask one quick question?" My father's face darkened. "Get off that stage." Just one question, Marcus repeated. You mentioned that TechEdu Corporation is the major sponsor of the Hamilton Education Fund. Do you know much about them, about their contract terms? Patricia's gold sequins caught the light as she half rose from her chair. What does that have to do with anything? Everything, Marcus replied simply. A hush settled. I could feel hundreds of eyes move between Marcus and David Chen, the board chair, who was already checking his phone. TechEdu, Marcus continued, was founded by someone who believes teachers deserve the same respect and resources as any CEO. Their donations come with clear conditions. Section 7.3 requires that fund management include active classroom educators. Section 7.4 gives preference to board members who have real teaching experience. Whispers rippled outward like wind through dry grass. My father frowned. What are you implying? That tonight's public announcement, Marcus said, does not meet those requirements. He glanced at David Chen. Check your email. I've sent the relevant sections of the contract. David Chen pulled out his phone, eyes narrowing as he scrolled. The color drained slightly from his face. Robert, he said gravely, we need to talk right now. Patricia tried to seize back control. This is absurd. Jessica reviewed the contract. Jessica stiffened. I skimmed it, she admitted, too quickly. The word skimmed landed like a dropped glass. David Chen's voice was ice. You skimmed a $5 million legal contract? Across the ballroom, a donor muttered loud enough for several tables to hear. Unbelievable. I looked at Marcus, my steady, quiet husband, seeing a new side of him. All those late nights in his home office, all those mysterious conference calls about values alignment, suddenly made sense. He hadn't just been listening, he'd been preparing. My father's composure wavered. We signed in good faith. And in violation of its terms, Marcus said gently but firmly, TechEdu reserves the right to withdraw funding if leadership ignores those requirements. The teachers at table 12 straightened in their seats. Some began to clap softly, a brave little rhythm under the stunned silence. Patricia's voice turned shrill. This is manipulation. He's tricking us with fine print. Marcus remained unshaken. The print isn't fine. It's the foundation of a $5 million commitment. Every donor in this room deserves to know whether the fund is being run with integrity. Phones lit up across the ballroom as guests scrolled through the email Marcus had just sent. From every direction came the buzz of notifications and the low murmur of surprise. I took a step closer to the stage, heart pounding. The humiliation of table 12, the years of being dismissed, seemed to crystallize into a single, brilliant moment of clarity. I hadn't been invisible. I'd been underestimated. Marcus scanned the room, his voice measured but strong. When you treat teachers as afterthoughts, you don't just insult individuals, you violate the very mission this fund was built to serve. A cameraman near the door whispered to his partner, Keep rolling. This is history. For the first time all evening, my father looked unsure, his principal's authority slipping like sand. Jessica's perfect smile flickered. Patricia's practiced elegance hardened into panic. Beside me, Mrs. Chen exhaled a long, quiet breath. He's not just standing up for you, she said softly. He's standing up for all of us. On stage, Marcus gave a single, small nod to me, to the teachers, to every quiet voice that had ever been drowned out. That's all for now, he said, lowering the microphone with a finality that resonated more than any shout. And the entire room seemed to know. The real program had only just begun. For a heartbeat, the stage was a study in stillness. Marcus stood at the microphone, posture composed, eyes calmly sweeping the room. He looked nothing like a man who had just crashed a gala. He looked like someone finally stepping into his rightful place. My name is Marcus Hamilton, he began, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone used to being heard. Yes, I took my wife's last name when we married. She doesn't know this, but it was because I wanted to honor the only Hamilton who actually understands what education means. A startled hush swept the ballroom. I felt my breath hitch. Marcus went on, his words precise as chisels. He told them how he'd watched me spend entire paychecks on books, how he'd seen me stay up past midnight creating individual learning plans for struggling students. Every sentence drew a clearer picture, the life of a teacher who gave more than she had, and the love of a man who believed that was the highest form of success. Then he dropped the truth that sent an audible shock through the room. I am the founder and CEO of Tech Edu Corporation. Gasps erupted. Some guests stood to get a better look. A photographer's flash fired like lightning. My father's chair screeched as he pushed to his feet. That's impossible, he snapped. You drive a Honda. I do, Marcus said simply. Because I'd rather put money into classrooms than into status symbols. It was a devastating, almost gentle rebuttal. He turned toward David Chen, the board chair. Section 3.2 of the Tech Edu contract allows immediate withdrawal of funds if the recipient organization fails to demonstrate genuine respect for classroom educators. Tonight's events make that failure unmistakable. Effective immediately, Tech Edu withdraws all funding from the Hamilton Education Fund. The words cracked like thunder. Jessica leapt up, lawyer instincts flashing. You can't do that! You're punishing a fund that helps children because of a family dispute. No, Marcus said evenly. I'm redirecting resources to people who actually understand education. This isn't punishment, it's realignment. Phones throughout the ballroom buzzed with breaking alerts. Someone whispered that the live stream had passed 50,000 viewers. I caught a flash of the trending hashtag on a guest's screen. Number teachers deserve respect. Patricia's composure shattered. You've deceived us, she cried, voice sharp enough to cut glass. I never lied, Marcus answered. You never asked. You assumed quiet meant small. David Chen stepped forward, contract in hand, his voice clipped. Robert, we need your resignation letter by Monday. Tonight's public breach leaves us no choice. Jessica's phone kept buzzing clients perhaps, already watching the spectacle unfold online. When she finally answered one call, her face drained of color. Yes, Mr. Richardson, I understand. Tomorrow morning. She hung up, visibly shaken. I took in the sight of my father, usually so commanding, now pale and speechless. For decades he had been the man everyone deferred to. Now the ground of influence had shifted entirely. Marcus raised the microphone again. Because teachers deserve better, Tech Edu will create a new entity, the Olivia Hamilton Excellence in Teaching Foundation. The same $5 million will go there directly to educators. A ripple of cheers began at the back tables, teachers and support staff who knew exactly what that meant. Phones lit up again as donations began pledging in real time, every dollar matched by Marcus's company. Patricia's voice broke with disbelief. You can't just replace our foundation. Marcus's reply was soft but final. It no longer exists. Without funding, it's only a name. I stood rooted, heart pounding, as the truth settled in. The quiet man who'd walked beside me for years had just rewritten the entire story of my life in a matter of minutes, not for revenge, but to show the world the value of what I do every day. By the time the last claps faded and the live stream counter soared past 2 million views, the Hamilton Education Fund was effectively gone. Marcus's final words still hung in the chandeliered air, clear as church bells. It no longer exists. Without funding, it's only a name. The next few hours felt dreamlike. Teachers surrounded me in spontaneous solidarity, hugging me, pressing donation pledges into my hands. Guests I'd never met thanked me for standing firm. Someone passed along their phone so I could see the comments pouring in. Finally, someone stands up for educators. This is the story every teacher needed tonight. Marcus stayed at my side, fielding a storm of media requests with calm precision. Tonight isn't about interviews, he kept saying. It's about teachers. Outside the Grandview Hotel, cameras flashed like lightning against the early morning sky. Reporters shouted questions about the contract, the sudden foundation change, the family drama. We walked past them quietly, hand in hand. A single sentence from Marcus to the press, values matter more than prestige, was all he offered. The fallout came quickly. By dawn, screenshots of Patricia calling teachers embarrassments had become viral memes. Jessica's comment, "Some people are meant for greatness, others for teaching," was printed on protest signs outside her law firm. Within 72 hours, Foster and Associates announced they were reviewing the professional conduct of a senior associate involved in a high-profile incident. My father tried to stay silent. The school board did not. In a carefully worded statement, they said Robert Hamilton had voluntarily accelerated his retirement. Everyone understood what that meant. Meanwhile, the Olivia Hamilton Excellence in Teaching Foundation caught fire in the best way. Pledges and sponsorships poured in, companies eager to stand on the right side of a national conversation. Within a week, we'd raised over $1 million beyond Marcus's original commitment. I stayed in my classroom. Every morning I unlocked the door to a rush of small arms and bigger dreams. When parents asked why I hadn't taken time off, I told them the truth. The foundation exists to serve teachers, and I'm still one of them. 6 weeks later, as Marcus and I were reviewing scholarship applications at our kitchen table, my phone buzzed with a number I still knew by heart. "Olivia," my father's voice came through, rougher than I remembered. "We need to talk." I let the silence stretch. "I need to apologize," he said finally. "Do you?" I asked quietly. "Or do you just need forgiveness to salvage your reputation?" He hesitated. I shouldn't have given Jessica your position. I shouldn't have excluded you from the VIP table. What about calling teaching an embarrassment? About years of dismissing what I do?" Another pause. "I wanted more for you. More than shaping the future? More than being loved by 28 kids who think I hung the moon?" My voice stayed calm. "That isn't more, Dad. That's just different." He sighed, an old sound of defeat. "So what now?" "I'm willing to have a relationship," I said, "if you agree to 6 months of family therapy, a public apology to the teaching community, and a real effort to understand why what you did was harmful. Not just the consequences, the harm." "That's extreme." "It's a boundary," I said. "If you choose not to meet it, we're done." "You've changed," he said bitterly. "Marcus has turned you against me." "No. Marcus showed me I deserve respect. You showed me you wouldn't give it. That's not the same thing." I hung up gently. No anger, no triumph, just clarity. The foundation flourished. At our first board meeting held deliberately at table 12 of the very ballroom, where I'd been hidden, we funded emergency grants for 89 classrooms and approved scholarships for teachers seeking advanced degrees. Reporters covering the event wrote headlines like, "From table 12 to boardroom chair." That night Marcus and I lingered alone in the empty hall. "Full circle," he said, brushing a stray curl from my forehead. "Not full," I corrected softly. "Forward." 6 months after that unforgettable night, the Olivia Hamilton Excellence in Teaching Foundation was thriving far beyond anything we'd dreamed. We had already awarded 127 scholarships to teachers pursuing advanced degrees, funded emergency classroom grants for nearly 90 schools, and created mental health support programs for hundreds of educators facing burnout. And still, every weekday morning, I unlocked my third-grade classroom door at PS 48. I greeted 28 children with the same joy as always, because the foundation was never meant to replace my calling, it was built to magnify it. One quiet Saturday, Marcus and I sat reviewing the latest funding applications when I placed a small white stick on the table, 2 pink lines. His eyes widened, then softened into the happiest kind of disbelief. "A teacher's baby," he whispered, laying a gentle hand on my still flat stomach. "They're going to change the world." "Every baby changes the world," I said, smiling through sudden tears. "Teachers just help them realize it." In that instant, the noise of past betrayals fell completely silent. We were building something new, life, love, and a future shaped by choice rather than approval. My father never met the conditions. I set no therapy, no public apology, no effort to understand. Patricia's occasional sharp emails went straight to spam. Jessica reinvented herself as a work-life balance coach on social media, carefully omitting her short, infamous career at Foster & Associates. And for the first time in my life, I felt no need to chase anyone's acceptance. I had discovered the hardest boundary of all, the one inside, against self-doubt, and against believing that choosing purpose over prestige makes you less. Marcus hadn't saved me. He had simply revealed what was already true, that my work mattered, that I mattered. Months later, a former student, now a new teacher herself, visited my classroom. "Mrs. Hamilton," she said shyly, "you showed me that teaching is a superpower." I thought of every child who had ever slipped me a thank you note, every parent who had written "You changed my child's life," every teacher who'd whispered, "Don't ever let them tell you it's not enough." Teaching isn't less than law. Caring isn't less than competing. Service isn't less than status. Different is not less. Different is everything. If you've ever been told that your work is ordinary, remember this. Your worth isn't measured by the seat someone assigns you. It isn't decided by family approval, a paycheck size, or a title on a door. It lives in the lives you touch and the futures you help shape. That night at the Grandview Hotel, I was literally placed at table 12, but the table was never the measure of my value. Today, the foundation that bears my name stands as proof. When you refuse to accept someone else's definition of success, you don't just claim your worth, you multiply it. Thank you for walking through this journey with me. May every teacher, every quiet builder of futures, know that what you do is not ordinary, it is extraordinary.